All right, so we're recording. So first of all, we have just about 100 people in here. Thank you so much for being here. I don't want to take up too much time, but we definitely wanted to have this first meeting to review just a little bit about the new scheduling format that's going to be in place starting in the 2024 fall season. As I said before, two quick things. About an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago, I sent out an email, which was actually a calendar invite for this meeting. All of the athletic directors and administrators and anybody on the sport committees, including those people who are in the Coaches Association, received that email. So if you do need another copy of that email, just contact your athletic director first or your Coaches Association. I can also send it to you, but just be a lot easier to contact your athletic director. And so that file is what we're going to be walking through here today. We're going to first cover, the first thing we're going to cover are the schedules and how the schedules will roll out in our entire format for the schedules. And then second thing we'll go over, time, as long as we have enough time, is a brief overview of the RPI. All right. All right. So let's go ahead. So I'm just going to share my screen here, and I'm going to use the exact document that was sent out to you. So if you scroll down just to page 2 of this document, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger here so we can all read it. So if you just look at this quick timeline, which was also in the email about this meeting, we've completed numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. We've had completed alignments submitted by the sport committees, individual sport committees. Our sport committees are made up of administrators, athletic directors, coaches, and officials organizations. So we've completed that process at the sport committee level. Those proposals have gone out to the survey of schools, which were then communicated back to if there was anything big, were communicated back to the sport committees. Those alignments were put forward to the athletic directors executive board, number 3, for endorsement. And then at last Monday's principals committee on athletics, all of our proposals were approved by the PCOA. So we're sitting here at number 5. All right. And so the first thing I want to go over is exactly how that 80 and 50% will be communicated. So I think what I'd like to do is just skip down here, and I'm going to actually open it up in a different window, just because it's easier to see this way. Mike Green, did you just switch over to Excel? Can you see Excel right now, Mike? Give me a thumbs up. Okay. So this is what we're working on, okay? We've had established game caps for some time now, all right? But this is the number that we discussed with all of the individual sport committees, all right? Which is the number of league games required for playoff eligibility. So if you only want to play, for instance, if you only wanted to play in the sport of soccer, 10 league games, you could do so. You just wouldn't be eligible for the playoffs. So each of the sport committees identified and targeted in on these specific number of games. And this is a number of games that the committees thought were easy for teams to obtain, and the number of games that really legitimized a full season and a championship. So here in the fall, we're talking about field hockey, football, soccer, and then girls tennis and volleyball. So these are the numbers that we're trying to get to. Okay. And everybody's going to have the opportunity to state whether they want to receive 50% of their league schedule, or they want to receive 80% of their league schedule directly from the Interscholastic League. And those are all going to be specific games that are assigned within your division. And I'm going to switch over to the form right now. So this form is it says draft right now. That will be removed in the next day or so. And what every school is going to have to submit this. We also have an online form that can be filled out if people would rather do it online. We have a paper form, so that if people would rather print it out and do it on paper, they can then scan it back to us. But what everybody is going to have the option to do is to, along the headings here, is to take 80% of the schedule or 50%. And if they opt for 50%, there are three options. You can opt for just 50%, which means you want no additional games scheduled, or you can opt for 50% with games in a division above you, or with games in a division below you. And what we're going to do is that, and we have written here, this right here, this part, I don't think I can highlight it, but this part that says the basketball example. So that's an example of your three options with 50%, which is that if you wanted 50% in a basketball season, if you wanted to take just 50%, you would get roughly 9 games out of the 18. However, if you're a Division II basketball team and you're asking for 50% with additional games against the higher division, we're going to match that team up with those Division I programs that request the opposite. So if we have multiple teams or even single teams that request games versus a higher division or a lower division, we're going to match those teams up and automatically put those on your schedule up to that 80% mark. So in this basketball example here, you would be getting 9 games in your division. And if you wanted to play teams in Division III, we would get you up to an additional 5 games to get you to 14 versus Division III teams that requested to play teams in your division or requested to play up a division. So those are the initial 4 options, and I'd like to just work through a few more things before we get to questions. All right. All right. So the Interscholastic League, we're going to be doing a few additional things in addition to just sending this out and matching teams up. The first one is the potential to hold mandatory scheduling days, where we have it be mandatory that one representative from every school in a sport comes into the Interscholastic League, and basically nobody leaves until everybody has that number of required games to make the playoffs. The second thing that we're going to do, and this is something that we would, especially in some of our limited sports, soccer has a ton of teams, but in field hockey and football, there are a lot of competitive teams just over our borders. Southeastern Massachusetts is full of them. Eastern Connecticut isn't quite as plush, but there are a lot of opponents there that are easier to get to, certainly these days, than crossing the Washington Bridge, trying to get to Mount Hope or Barrington or anywhere else. So the other thing we're going to do is try to strengthen those relationships between schools. Mike Lunny, our executive director, already has a list of schools from Massachusetts and Connecticut that participate in every single sport, along with their division in those individual leagues. We also have member school lists that will be going out for Massachusetts and Connecticut, and those will form the basis of getting you contact information at schools, providing you with schools that are of similar enrollment or competition size. There's a lot of resources in there. We've also worked with Our School Today to create a Games Wanted page, which will be on the league website. And if you'll just give me a moment, I think I can show you that Games Wanted page. Just give me one moment. There we go. Okay. So this is something that will be accessible to all athletic directors. And it should be up by the end of the week. So this is just my activity scheduler as I see it. And right down here under utilities, I have go to Games Wanted, and the username is school with the password being AD. All right, so that is right here. Now, obviously, there's nothing here. All right, but it's if you wanted to sign into this and post a game, you would just do it right here. You would use there's one username and password for the entire state. I would log in, go to team schedules. Everything is already populated for the entire year. So I would want to, well, let's just use football for now. This is for this year, but you would very easily just be able to put in a date. Hold on one second. Event type, there's only one. I have to put a home host, which is the team requesting. My opponent is a game wanted, and my location is flexible, my school or your school. So I would just list this as flexible. And then you can save and exit. Okay, out of the date range. So let's do 23. And then once that saves, it's going to be on that public view, which it's taking a long time. There we go. But now if I come back out to that public view and I go back to September of 2023, you'll see right there that we have Barrington looking for a football game, you know, on Sunday, September 10th. So it's a very easy way for our athletic directors or our coaches to post games wanted in any sport in the Interscholastic League and just start those conversations. And that will be in the exact same spot. Oh, that's still in games wanted. That will be in the exact same spot on everybody's activity scheduler across the state. All right. And the last thing is that Mike Lunny is going to use his contacts in those other two states to communicate with their schools, especially the eastern side of Connecticut and the southeastern Massachusetts, just to make sure that they're aware. And it might take a little while, it might take a year or two, but we're really looking forward to opening up the pool of competitive teams in those regions so that we can get more competitive games on the schedule. All right. So let me open up to some questions so far. Anything, now I'm going to get to a lot more than that, but I'd like to just take a pause here and ask for if anybody has any questions on what's already been presented. We're going to continue to go through what types of games you can and can't schedule, and we're also going to go through the RPI after that. But are there any questions on what I've already covered?
Yeah, Tom, Mike Traff.
Hey, Mike.
How you doing? Tom, are you telling me on that Games Wanted page that any coach from any school can go on there and post a game scheduled at one of my schools? You felt like, isn't it a little bit dangerous having everybody having access to Like, for example, my webpage, like some coach may be putting in a game, I know.
Mike, that's not your webpage.
No, I know, but there's a common, a password, right?
But
So,
it doesn't touch your website.
all right, so when he posts a game wanted, or then did what you did and schedule it,
It's not a schedule though. It's just a game wanted.
all right, so it
And it
doesn't,
doesn't, like, if I went into George, like I put that under George, if I went into George's, our activity scheduler, it's not gonna show up.
all right, okay.
It doesn't show up
So
at all.
they only have the ability to post a game wanted. They can't actually schedule it. Am I correct?
Correct. 100%. They cannot schedule a game. It's just a games wanted page that anybody can post to. Now, the other thing is they also have to have that password. So I just told it to 117 people, but I can change it tomorrow. And only the athletic directors can have access to it. So I'm looking at Tommy Maluski. And if Tommy Maluski wanted to do that, he would have to get it from you.
Yeah. Hey, Tom.
So that's a good question, though. It does not automatically, it does not write anything to your individual
Okay.
activity schedule.
All right, thanks, Tom.
Yep. Any other questions before we move on? Did I miss anything?
Hey, Tom, sorry, quick question. Amanda B, North Smithfield.
Yep.
I just had a quick question on the 50 and 80%. So
Okay.
do you have to choose 50 or 80% for your entire school, or is it by sport?
Good question. So it is by sport. So I'm going to roll
Okay,
back
great.
over to, this is the actual form. It might just look a little bit different. Amanda, can you see the form right now?
Yes.
So this is the actual form. So this, you'll either fill this out online through a survey, just like when you fill out the realignment surveys, or you fill it out on paper. And you're just going to say in football, you're going to put North Smithfield up at the top. You're going to say North Smithfield's in Division 4 football. You're going to know that you need 8 games to be eligible for the postseason. And you're going to tell me, do you want 6 games at 80%? Do you want me to only give you 4 games? Do you want me to give you 4 games matching you with teams in Division 3? And there's no teams below you, so that's not an option. Does that make sense, Amanda?
Yep, that makes sense. The 50%, just I'm a little confused on that part. So you're going to give if it's 50% in our division, or it would be 50% where you choose to give us games above or below. And then we'd still have to find the other. So let's stick with 8 games. So you'd find 4 games for us, either above or below, and then we'd still have to find 4. It's not like you give us 4 in our division and then maybe like 2 more that are above or below.
So that's a good distinction that I'm going to add to this. So when I schedule you 80%, it's going to be only versus teams within your division. Okay?
Yep.
When I schedule you these 50% games, this second column here, it's going to be 50% versus teams within your division. So wherever you see 50%, it's always versus teams in your division. Okay?
Yep.
So if you opt for this third one here, okay, let's just take football. If you're in Division 4, you opt for 50% with games assigned versus teams above. I'm going to give you 4 mandatory games in football versus Division 4 teams. And then I'm going to try to match you up with 2 Division 3 teams that are asking to play down.
So it would be a total of 6 games.
Correct. So we're
Okay.
going to get you to 6. You would still have to, now you would normally in football, the entire state gets 1, and that's the first week of the season. So everybody always gets 1 in football, which is, a little bit different than other sports.
Yep.
So now you would just be responsible for getting 2.
Okay.
Tom, what happens if teams don't want to play down, like there's not an even amount of teams that want to play down, that want to play up, what would you do then?
So the additional games above or below are not guaranteed. It only works if we have numbers. They don't have to be equal. They don't have to be equal, but we need teams to be in that category of asking down or asking up in order to match them. So the simple answer is, Michelle, if we have nobody asking to play down a division, then nobody that asks up will get extra games. It's just available for you if we have that reciprocation from the teams in the other division.
One additional question. How will you know who you're going to be scheduled to play so that
Tom,
you
I
can
can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Sorry.
I can hear you, Christy. Michelle, keep going, please.
All right. So I was going to say, how will you know or when will you know what the RIIL is going to schedule so that you can go search out teams for your additional games? Like, how will you know who you're already playing so that you can go contact other schools to fill the rest of your schedule? When will you know?
Sure. So, okay. So, and actually it's going to be better for me to actually show you a different document. Or actually, I can just do it this way. Sorry, I'm just going back and forth here. Let's go back to this document. So I'm just going back to the schedule request form. All right. So if we release this tomorrow, which I think we can, we're going to ask by next Friday to let us know in those 5 sports. And I just want to note that field hockey is not here because field hockey is there are 17 schools in the state and possibly less. So field hockey does not follow this. So these 5 sports, football, soccer, tennis, and volleyball, Michelle, let's just take Central. You're going to get those schools and you're going to tell me, you're going to choose one option for each of those sports. You're going to return that to me by Friday, February 9th. All right. At that point, I need to build those schedules. So my answer to you is that you are going to receive them ASAP after that date. So I'm going to take one sport at a time, one division at a time, go through those schedules. I already have templates for all the schedules. I just don't have what teams asked for what. So there's already work that's already done. So you could, you won't, but you could technically get one of those schedules released to the entire state on Monday, the 11th. Oh, I'm sorry, the 12th. So you could be looking at a completed football or girls soccer schedule on Monday, February 12th. So it's my goal to try to get these schedules out to you as soon as possible so that you can do that scheduling. Now, if the athletic directors think that they can get this all back to me quicker, I'll put an earlier date on it. And we can try to get the schedules to you even quicker. But everything is dependent on getting these in from everybody. And it's important to note that if we have teams that don't submit this, and if I have to chase people for it, it's going to delay getting the schedules out because I can't do this with one school missing, or it would be very difficult to do it without having this information from a school.
And will that schedule that you release also have the dates that would be available that we would go out and fill? You know what I mean? Like ahead of time?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Especially in football, yes, because we're only talking about weekends.
But we wouldn't know that ahead of time. Like I couldn't go now and try to get a game in Massachusetts or whatever, because I don't know what dates I have available. Is that correct or no?
I pretty much know what weeks are going to be the 2 truly open weekends. I do.
Okay, I'll talk to you later about that then.
I mean, if you just give me a second. Michelle, it's going to be the first weekend, Friday, September 13th, and then week 5, which is Friday, October 11th. Those are going to be
Okay.
those are going to be the big open weekends
For
football,
everybody.
where the entire state is open.
Okay.
Did I
Tom.
answer your question though? Oh, Dino's next. Did I answer your question, Michelle?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, Dino.
Yes, for football, the like we've been doing in the past, is that first week still a non-league game for football?
Yes.
Okay.
Although it's not a, so I do think one thing we're going to have to look at is in football is
You didn't answer.
the one thing we're going to have to decide on in football is right now we had, I think this is a mistake, but we had 8 games required to be eligible for the postseason. In the past, that's only been 7. So I do think we're going to have to come down a number on that to allow for that first week non-league. Now, Dino, the answer is that first week can be non-league if you choose for it to be. If you want it to be a league game, you're more than welcome to do so. Scheduling additional games is not going to guarantee you a better RPI. Scheduling strong opponents and winning games is what's going to get you a better RPI. So if you wanted one on the 13th to be a league game, it could be.
But in our schedule, do we have to have a non-league game?
No.
Tom, are you taking out the injury fund?
I'm not talking about the injury fund. The injury fund weekend is still as it's always been.
Do we have enough weeks built in there?
Yes. We have the injury fund weekend is the weekend of Friday, September 6th for football.
6th. Mm-hmm.
So the 13th is the first weekend. So Karen had a good question in the chat, and I'm just going through the chat right now. I have about 5 messages. So Karen Lockhart, East Greenwich Soccer, you do have to go out and schedule those additional games to get to 100%. So, but we're going to help you to do that in a number of ways. And the most important one, I think, is giving people time to go out and find the games, but then having a point in time where we say we're going to bring every girls soccer program into the room, and we're going to, if we need to, and we're going to fill everybody's schedule. So we're going to get everybody to 16 games before they leave here. And that might mean 1 team or 2 teams have to go above the cap, not the cap, above 16. But we need to get everybody to 16 before we leave that room.
And so even if it's, say, a Division II opponent, that could still count towards your RPI, and that could still count towards the 16 games. So if you have 13 Division I games and you supplement it with 3 Division II teams, you could still make the playoffs in Division I.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
So now I'm just scrolling through this. And so the next question is Gennaro Ferraro, Burrillville football. If a team picks 50% in league, how will those games be selected by the RIIL? So it's more important in football because there are less games. But we will make, according to rankings, we will make them equal. So what I'm saying is that if you look at a football schedule with 6 games, it's not going to be totally random. You're not going to get the number 1 and number 2 team in the state on your schedule while somebody else has the 8 and 9 in those same spots. We have to make it. Now it's still important in tennis, volleyball, and soccer, and field hockey. I'm sorry, not field hockey. In tennis, soccer, and volleyball, it's just not as important because there are many more games. So in general, if you choose 50%, you would probably only get 1 of the top 4 teams in football. You would get only 1 of the top 4 teams in the state. If you chose 60, you would more than likely get 2 of them. But we will try to make that equal so that if you plug in that ranking, all of the totals are going to be relatively equal for every single team in that division. Good answer, Gennaro. Are you good? Okay.
Tom,
Hold on. I just want to answer one more question, Paul, and then you're next up.
all right.
It's Richard, is there a limit of how many games you can schedule with one school? Yes, it's 2. But there's a caveat there. You can go above that with league approval. And the only reason we're putting that in there is because we don't know what special circumstances could be out there. So if you wanted to do, and I'm looking at Karen Lockhart, so I'll use East Greenwich Soccer. If East Greenwich Soccer gets matched up versus another Division I opponent, and it's a home game for East Greenwich, you could very easily get another game by turning around and saying, hey, we'll do a home and home with you. And that's your second game. Paul?
So going back to the league and non-league games, if I schedule 50%, 80%, whatever it is, those games that I choose to schedule, is it the teams within my division, league games, and teams out of my division or out of state, a non-league, or can I make those league too? Like, what's the difference? What's the advantage? You understand my question?
I do. So the answer is yes. How about that? The answer is yes. You can schedule any Rhode Island Interscholastic League team, no matter the division, okay, as a league game. You can now in football, the conversation I just had with Dino, there's one open weekend, so you only have one available non-league game. Okay, so you can do that anywhere in the schedule. And this is more applicable to other sports. We have, and I sent it out to you guys, when you schedule out of state, and I just want to share this, I think it's one of the last pages. I think it's one of the last pages that I sent out. Here it is. And that's again, this is just a draft, but that's the out-of-state competition form. So Paul, if you're scheduling an out-of-state game, okay, you just need to make sure that whether it's a Connecticut team, a Massachusetts team, or anywhere else you go, you just need to make sure that they're part of the state association.
Right. So I guess really what I'm probably asking about football because, like you said, in the past, it's been 7 games to make the playoffs. And I saw on the sheet you have 8.
Well,
so even if you go down to 7,
Paul, that's going to change to 7.
Right. But if I have to schedule 2 games because I chose the 80% option,
yep,
is a non-league game going to hurt my chances or not count towards the playoff? Or I'm trying to determine whether I should play league or non-league, and what's the difference?
So a league game is going to count towards your standings. A non-league game
won't.
Included.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So you in football, and I don't want, I want all the football questions, but I want other questions as well. But this is applicable to all sports. So you can schedule in football, you can schedule 8 league games or 7 league games and 1 non-league game. Or you can just schedule 7 league games and you cannot play in week 1. That's fine too. You don't have to, you don't have to schedule an 8th game. You can take a bye. But you have to get to that 7. What you do with the 8th, whether it's a bye, a non-league game, or a league game, is totally up to you and your opponent.
Right. So in sports where you have a higher amount of a bigger game cap, for instance, in basketball, if it's 20 or 21, I didn't look at it, but say the playoffs, to make the playoffs, you're going to play 17 games. You can schedule 4 non-leagues and they don't make a difference.
Correct. They don't make a difference. Yep. So basketball's right here. Basketball's right here. Your game cap is 22. And again,
22.
I just want to say this has not gone through the basketball sport committee yet. So these are all just pretend numbers right now. But if the basketball sport committee says you need to play 18 games to be eligible for the playoffs, and you choose, and Mount Pleasant High School chooses an 80%, we're going to give you 14 games. So Paul, you need to schedule 4 additional league games
league
But-
games, right?
But then you can also schedule an additional 4 non-league or league games. It doesn't matter.
Correct. I got you. Thank you.
Okay?
Hey, Tom, light traffic again.
Yep,
Uh,
go ahead, Mike, and then somebody else had a question. You're next. I didn't know who it was, though.
Okay, when we, let's say we opt for the 50%, okay? And now this, I wasn't aware of this, okay, a 50% plus 2 or whatever the case may be. What are we locked into for 2 years? If we ask for 50% plus 2 more games, are we locked in for 2 years just for the 50% that we opted for, or the 50% plus 2? Or 4, whatever it may be?
If you
Follow me?
opt, I would look at it this way. If you opt for the 50% plus,
Yeah.
those are assigned games and those need to be played for 2 years.
All right, so the 50% plus are locked in for 2 years.
100%.
Yeah, all right, very good, thanks.
100%. So it's a,
Tom,
yep,
going back to the question before, I think the piece that's missing is, some of them are missing is the ranking of the game you're playing. If you're D1, and you play a D1 team, it's 1 for 1. I
Yeah,
think, so if you're choosing a non-leagues, maybe you need to go over that.
we're gonna get to, you mean the RPI?
Right.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that.
How you pick your league out of your league games in different divisions, what the worths are.
Yep, we'll get to that, Carl. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I had a quick question, Tom Maluski.
Yes, Tommy.
So on your document you sent out today, on page 3, it has highlights, says all games count towards playoff qualification and seeding using the RPI index currently used by vast majority of other states. So I know Paul Rayo just asked, and I know Dino had asked, and I know this is going to be a football question, sorry, but so that first week is non-league. Does it count in the playoff RPI predictions for the playoff standings at the end of the season? Or I know that the gentleman just mentioned playing up, down, 1 to 2, Division 1 to Division 2. I'm still a little confused. Like, are we playing that game and does it count? Yeah, that's the part right there.
So Tommy, I think I need to rewrite that. Okay? Because that should say all league games.
Okay.
So and that's my error. So that should say all league games count towards playoff qualification. So when you look at this document, and this is in your packet, all right? I'm going to change football right now because I just realized there's an error there. I just changed football to read 7. Okay? So you have to get to 7 games to be qualified for the playoffs, because that's what we've always done. I didn't even realize there's 8 weeks. I didn't even realize that was in there incorrectly. So you have to get to 7. All of those games count towards it. So there's 2 different designations. It's league game, which is going to count towards the standings in your division, and non-league games, which are excluded.
Okay.
So that's an error on my part, and I'll need to rewrite that before I send it out again.
Thank you.
Yep.
But Tommy, you can make that non-league game a league game if you want to, correct?
You can. It's adding a game, Wes, because it's an average. Adding a game is not just adding a game, just having more games is not going to give you any advantage. What's going to give you an advantage is scheduling good competition and winning games. Those are the 2 things that are going to benefit you in the RPI. Just playing another game is not. I do have a few more questions here. Brandon LaHood, which is tennis from Lincoln. Would every team have the same weeks open available? So that's one of the keys, Brandon. So Brandon asked if everybody's going to have the same open dates. And that's one of the keys to this, is yes. That is, and in football, it's very easy because you just designate a week as open. In the other sports, with the constrictions of officials, what we might have to do is say, for instance, Brandon, I know it's not in tennis. In tennis, it will be the exact same schedule, but we're going to say every Thursday, Friday, you're going to have one league game for the entire season. So if we have an 8-week soccer season, every Thursday or Friday, you're going to have a league game scheduled, which is going to give you 8 weeks, 8 games in 8 weeks. And then in order to get to the 13, 5 of those weeks would have to have a second game that would be scheduled at the beginning. In tennis, I would just schedule the entire state on the same days so that everybody has the same dates open, because we don't have the constriction of officials. Mike Sassy, I don't think your face is not looking very good to me right now. Are you okay?
I'm just a little confused about the scheduling piece still. Being a 9th ranked team out of the 10 in the Division I thing. Originally we chose 50%, just not understanding the whole, not completely understanding the formula. I guess I had a couple of questions. One is, if we do 50%, can we add a couple of additional Division I teams and then 2 Division II teams, for example?
You could, as long as those teams have the weekends. So you could, in theory, you could add, in football, it's a little bit different because there's so few games, there's only so many weekends. But if another Division I team asked for 50%, they would have the same weekend open as you. So if you have multiple teams asking in one division, asking for 50%, then you have those weekends open. Okay, and you also have the week 1 and the week 5 that are going to be open for the entire state.
Could we have the leeway if we put in 50 already to potentially change it to 80 before February, the February date?
Yeah, I'm just going to tell you this, Mike. You may have spoken with your administration and your athletic directors, but I don't have anything from St. Ray's. So that was an internal conversation, and they'll put that down on that sheet by February 9th, and that will be a final decision.
Okay, thank you.
So I got a question from Don. What happens if you already made a date with an out-of-state team? Don, I would just say, if that's the case, then send it to me, just so I can be aware of it as I build the schedule of open dates. And that goes for any sport. Now, in reality, with the exception of football in the fall, anything else, you can just move a game off of it. So even if you had an out-of-state game, which we want you to keep, we want you to schedule out-of-state games. And if this is Don Denham, especially in Barrington, when you can get to southeastern Massachusetts much quicker than you can get to Westerly, we want you to schedule out-of-state and open up that pool of competition. So we'll work around that if you already have a date next year. So I have a question from Rob Klosser. How many games will the league add to 50%? And the answer to that is anything up to 80%. I don't know right now. That's going to depend on how many teams in a higher division ask to play down and how many teams in a lower division ask to play up, because those will be matched together. But it's somewhere between that 50% number and the 80%. Question from Christy Belisle of Mount Hope. So Christy, I think I answered Gennaro's question about football, but it applies to this. What happens if the league doesn't give you top RPI teams from your division? The best that we can do is create even divisions based on the rankings. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to give everybody, based off of the rankings, which do not tell us exactly how you're going to do next year. We're going to give everybody an even schedule. But I think one of the key points in all of this is in your packet near the end, I think. Oh, wrong one, hold on. In your packet here, if you move down to postseason information, all right, we have expanded playoffs in every sport, even in football. Division I, you're getting every teams into a playoff bracket. Division II in football, you're getting 8 of 12 or 75%. Division 3, you're getting 8 of 11, which is more than 75%. And in Division 4, you're getting 8 of 10, which is 80%. So we have expanded playoffs. So I think the point is that scheduling, if you took 80% or if you took 50%, you're going to be in the exact same boat to start the season from an RPI standpoint that every other team taking that same percentage is at. Because we're going to try to make those schedules as even as possible based off the current rankings. Christy, does that make sense? I'm going to take that as a yes.
Tom, one additional question, is that even if if you choose 80%?
It's we're going to try to make those your opponents equal. Yes, we're not going to, Mike. If you choose 50%, we're not going to give you Hendricken, LaSalle, Central, and North Kingstown as your 4 games.
What if we chose 80? Would you think it'd be half of those still if we're ranked 9th?
I mean, you might get 2 of them.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at 50%, and that's in any sport, if you look at the top teams in girls soccer, if you chose 50%, we're only getting you to 8 games, so you can look at that and say, okay, it's going to be, if you look at that spread of teams, and I'm sorry, but I think it's I think girls soccer's 13 teams in Division 1. We're not going to give you 8 games versus the top 8 teams in that division. It's going to be spread out a little bit so that everybody's working from an even playing field going into the season. So we have a question here from Vin McGinn about the 50-80 as it relates to tennis. Vin, I do think, and I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't realize that Massachusetts and Connecticut played tennis in the spring. I thought that they were the same as us. So there are going to be a lot of duplication in those schedules. So it's going to be a lot of home and aways, but the difference is it's going to be requested or agreed to by the schools. And I do think in tennis, we're going to have a scheduling day. So Christy, you can, when you're looking at our games available, let me just move over to it really quickly. Oh, I don't know if I'm still up on it, but I can be. So when you look at this is going to be, what you're seeing right now can be made public, and it will be public. So you can go down here and you can go to view schedules, and you can view. Now, the only reason football's here is because I was the only one to put a game in. But if once a game is put in, a game wanted is put in, every single one of these will be here. So you can search only by sport. You can search by sport and date. You can do anything you want. You can just scroll right here to, I want to look at March 10th. So I can go to March 10th and I can say what's available on March 10th. So there's just like you can on the public facing page of each of your schools, this Rhode Island Games Wanted page can be done the same way. But there's many different ways to view the schedules. Oh, I'm sorry, to view the games wanted. Let's get a few more questions.
Just have a quick question, just to make sure, non-league games do not count towards your RPI, is that correct?
AJ, say that one more time.
Non-league games, they do not count towards your RPI, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yep, do not count, non-league games do not count towards standings, just like now.
All right.
Yep, and that would be something that you would have to determine. We have on that document that I sent out, we have a drop dead date for determining if a game is league or non-league. For the fall, it would be August 1. So everything.
One more.
Go ahead, Carl.
One more clarification. So like I said, I think I asked this before, but I just want to clarify it, is you have to determine your league schedule before the season starts. You can't schedule 20 games and then take your 16 best results and count that towards your RPI. Everything has to be done before the season starts, correct?
100% correct, Carl. Yes.
Okay.
And I'll just go to that on the, on this page. I think it's, I don't know exactly where it is. I'm just, oh, it's right here. So under regular, on page 4, under regular season scheduling details, it's right here. League games must be designated by the deadline below. So by August 1st for the fall, all of your league and non-league designations must be made. So you can't, like Carl said, you can't go in and, cherry pick which games are going to count and which games are not. Holly Kindle, which I believe is Lincoln Tennis, had a question about awards. And I'm sorry for the answer, Holly, but I don't know how that's going to affect awards, and that's not my problem. That's going to be something that coaches associations will work out. Coaches associations give out those awards. It's just going to have to be a question for those coaches associations and other organizations that give awards out. Mike, did I answer that question about can they add Mike Sassy, Division I, Division II games? Did I answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, the more we speak, if, again, just to be clear, I know it's a football question, but if we did 80%, if it looked like it would be 2 of the top 4, and then my other 4 would come from the other 5, we'd be more apt to do the 80% versus the 50%. My concern was if we did 80% and we got a lot, if it was top heavy.
Would not be top heavy.
Yeah.
Mike, I can tell you right now, if you opt for 80%, if any football school opts for 80% in any division, you are not going to see. I just want to say, with the exception of Division 4, because there's a limited number of teams. I don't know about that yet, but specifically in Division 1 and Division 2 and Division 3 with 12 or 11 teams. I'm sorry, with 10, 11 or 12 teams, you're not going to see more than 2 of the top 4 teams. And that goes across the board. It's going to be even. You're, like I said, in girls soccer, Division 1, you're not going to have the 9th-ranked team have to play 1 through 8 for your 50%. That's not going to happen. So, Jordan, Jordan, and it's just a question about not being able to find games to make the playoffs. We're not going to let that happen. So we're going to give time after the schedule's released. We're going to give time for the schools to look at it and possibly fill their schedule, whether it's in league games versus teams in your division that you choose, whether it's league games versus teams in Rhode Island outside of your division, or whether it's out-of-state games that can qualify as league games. We're going to give you some time to do that. And then if everybody's schedule's filled, then we're perfect. If we're having a number of teams that are having a problem, we are going to step in, intervene, have a scheduling day, and bring everybody in. Because it's one school here or there might need to add a game, but we need everybody to start out the season with those minimum number of games to be eligible for the playoffs. So, Jordan, we're not just going to put you out on an island and say, figure it out. Henry Cabral, yes, 9/13 is the first weekend of football. Was there a question on that? Did I miss it?
Tom, I'd like to add kind of lead into this, because if it starts the 13th and it ends on 11/2, I'm assuming there's 3 weeks of playoffs. That only leaves 8 weeks. And on the schedule here, you have the possibility of 9 games capped, but that couldn't happen.
Well, we actually have a few teams right now, including Central, Hendricken, and LaSalle, who play on a game on the injury fund weekend.
Okay.
So,
Okay, gotcha.
so the game cap was always 10, but the 10 included Thanksgiving. So the game cap, I've interpreted the game cap as we do now as 9 plus Thanksgiving. So whether you have a 9th game, whether you have a Thanksgiving game or not, it's 9 before the playoffs start.
It's 9 before the playoffs start. Okay.
So,
Okay, and then So it's 9 before the playoffs start. Okay.
Correct.
But and then another one, because it's later in the chat. I have you now. Both teams have to agree if it's league or non-league, right?
In
If the
state,
game-
that is correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In state, that is correct. However, if you went and played somebody in Massachusetts for years, it would have had to have been non-league for you in the past. But that Massachusetts team more than likely counted it as a league game. So when you're going out of state, there's a difference. You don't have to have reciprocation of a league or non-league game going out of state, because we've been doing that for years. But if it's another RIL opponent, then yes, you have to agree if it's non-league or league.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Tom,
Yes, Mike.
I feel compelled to bring this up because the injury fund was mentioned.
Yep.
By all means, those teams, any team they want, can play a league or non-league game on an injury fund date. But coaches and ADs have to keep in mind, if you don't play an injury fund football game on that date where the officials work for free, your athletes are not covered in the event of an injury. That's the rule. So since you mentioned that those 3 teams played on an injury fund date, I don't want football coaches rushing out to play on the injury fund date. If they do, that's their prerogative. They certainly may do so, but in the event of an injury, they are not covered. That's all.
Thank you, Mike.
I have a quick RPI question, if you don't mind.
Chris, can we just can we hold on?
Sorry. Yep.
I just want to get through some of the you'll be the first question on RPI though. I have a question from Steve Bevilacqua. If you're a top team in a division, what do you Steve, if you want to come on, I'm not really understanding what your question is with no state tournament.
So if you're a top team in division, whatever division it is, like, why it wouldn't really benefit you either way if you're going to do 50% and schedule better teams, right? That's going to hurt your chances of making the playoffs. Even if you think you're a good team in your division, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
So
80%, and you think you're going to make the playoffs, that the system doesn't really benefit that type of team, does it?
It would, yes, and just like I said to Chris, I think it's about time, especially since we've been an hour on this. I think it's about time to just move on to RPI if everybody's good. Jim Alves, Jim, you're not going to like this answer. Question about if 2 teams have identical records. We're not going to be going by records anymore, Jim. We're going to be going by the RPI. So if you have an identical RPI, there is a tiebreaking formula, which includes head-to-head.
Thank you.
Yep.
I guess, Tom, last question.
Yep, go ahead, Carl.
It was coming down to that is D1 15 team, I'm just boys soccer, D1 15 teams, 12 make the playoffs. You come down to the end. There's 2 teams sitting there at 12. Are you rewarded for playing the 80% schedule or hurt by that 80% schedule if the RPI comes up being the same?
So
And you end up with
if your RPI, there is a tiebreaker, which I can.
Is that part of RPI? Because I'll just
It
back
is.
off and wait for that.
It is, yeah.
Okay, I'll back off and wait for the answer. Thanks.
Okay. All right, so I'll move on to the RPI. And the first thing I want to do with the RPI is just show everybody that we've had Mike and I have been working on this RPI for about 14 months. And we've been working with Max Preps on it. So I do want everybody to just understand one thing, and that is that when I click over into the RPI, it's not perfect because the schedules in Max Preps last year were not perfect. So I just want everybody to understand that. But if we look at, and I'm just going to pull up girls soccer here, on every single one of our pages, under quick links here, there is Max Preps team RPI. And it's called the draft right now because we're not using it yet. So if I pull up girls soccer, okay, I can go by division, or I can just select the whole state. This is now, again, there might be a few errors in what games are counted in this. So it's, again, it hasn't been vetted. But this is what the RPI would have looked like if we had been using it last year. So girls soccer is there, boys soccer is there. The only fall sport that's not there is tennis, and that's because we were not using it. We were not using the scheduling in tennis. But you can go to girls volleyball and see what that RPI would have looked like. Football, with the exception of the Division I teams, is all in there. The Division I teams were obviously out of place because they played so many non-league games. But if you look at Division II, Division III, and Division IV, oh, that's nice. So if you look at Division II, Division III, and Division IV, you know, Cumberland, Barrington, Westerly, South Kingstown, St. Ray's, Burrillville, Woonsocket, West, Mount Pleasant, Portsmouth, so on and so forth. Those are the rankings, okay? And when you look at this, and let me just go back to girls soccer. I think it's a little bit more universal for everybody. This is there for every single one of our sports. There are two categories here, okay? And those are your win percentage and your opponent's win percentage, all right? And I'm just going to pull off this for 1 second and go to that document that each of you have. All right, and at its base, this last sentence here, RPI weights games versus each opponent based on their division alignment. So when you're looking at your winning percentage is an average of the teams that you beat. So if you beat, no matter what division you're in, if you beat a Division 4 team in girls soccer, you get 2.16 points towards that winning percentage. If you beat a Division 3 team, you get 3.6 points towards that winning percentage, your own winning percentage. 6 points for a Division 2 team and 10 points for a Division 1 team. So if you look here, they have a short, if you look at the Max Preps RPI, okay, it says, where is it now? There it is. This is the example right here. It doesn't matter what the sport is, okay? But if you play Cranston West, who's in Division 2, Middletown, who's in Division 2, and Tollgate in Division 3, okay, you beat Cranston West, they're a Division 2 team, you earn 6 points. You lose to Middletown, you earn no points for the win percentage. And then you beat Tollgate, who's a Division 3 team, so you earn 3 points. Okay, so the modified win percentage would be 3. And a nice way to look at this, all right, is that these numbers here, where it says class 1, 2, 3, and 4, if you played only teams within your division, that's the highest number that you can get. So if you're a Division 4 program and you played all Division 4 teams the entire year, a 2.2 would be a perfect score. A 3.6 would be a perfect score in Division 3. 6 would be a perfect score in Division 2. And 10 would be a perfect score in Division 1. And the other component of this is your opponent's win percentage. So it's just an average of all of your opponent's win percentage. So if we shift over here, back over to the website, if you played Cumberland, Pilgrim, North Kingstown, and Mount Hope, your opponent's win percentage would be the average of 9.375, 6.16 repeating, 5.88, 5.588, and 5.647. So if you played those 4 schools, your opponent's win percentage, win or loss, would be the average of those. So when you look here, Cumberland's, everybody's around 5 for opponent's win percentage because last year everybody played almost the same schedule.
So Tom, if you lose, you earn no percentage of their RPI. Is that what you're saying?
If you lose, you do not get anything in the win percentage column. You do still own you do get points for your strength of schedule, which is opponent's winning percentage.
But so that would vary week to week, wouldn't it?
It will vary slightly week to week, yes. It will vary slightly, yes.
What happens in the case of a draw in boys and girls soccer?
Half. The opponent's win percentage, that 40% of that 40%, if I just switch back over here for a second. So that 40% would still be the same because you still played them. That's your strength of schedule. That's the combination of all of your team's winning percentages. So the opponent win percentage would not be changed. However, you would get half under your own win percentage. So if you played let's just say you played a Division I team, you would get 5 points and they would get your points, half of those.
So West plays LaSalle, a draw. We each walk away, having nothing to do with the strength of schedule, but you're each getting 5 points because they're both Division I.
That's 100% correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. A good question from Amanda Bean, North Smithfield Athletic Director. Do all of these, do these points automatically populate? Yes, 100%. Everything is automatic. All you need to do is enter scores. Tennis is not going to need to do anything but enter their scores, but it will be the RPI.
Hey, Tom, this is a menial question, but when we see the standings on the league website, how are they going to be reflected? By your win-loss percentage, by your win-loss record, or by your RPI?
This page right here is going to be the new standings page. So you're no longer going to see Traff. Hold on.
You're no longer going to see what we currently see, right?
Correct. This is going to be it. Because this also has your record right there. So your pure record is listed. So if you'll be able to see. So just as an example, I'll go to girls soccer. And I'll go to our current standings. Just give me a minute to navigate that. I don't know why it's not going. Hold on one sec. All right. So this is our girls soccer page. If you click on our school today standings, it goes to this page. So all this page has is a breakdown by division, or in this case, by division and subdivision, and then your conference record. So that page would be replaced by the RPI page. So when you click on standings, it's going to go directly to the Max Preps RPI.
So Tom, so the two factors with out-of-state opponents would be their record in their league games, as well as the division that they'd be slated in Rhode Island based on enrollment, And if they're a higher enrollment than that 1,500 number, or you said super division. So whether they're in division or what class they're in Massachusetts doesn't matter. It's what they would be based on enrollment here.
Correct. So that is in there as well. And so that's one of the sheets
What's it there yet,
that
right?
you're referring to. I'm just going to share that. Or actually, yeah. Can you see
Yeah, I have
Chris,
it
can
right
you see the out-of-state sanctioning form right now?
Yep.
Okay.
Below it, it's not-
So initially, what would happen is now this is not going to have to be done every year. This would just have to be done each time for the first time you play an opponent. So this is not going to be a yearly thing. But if you play, I don't even know who, but if you play Case High School in Massachusetts, you would tell us what their enrollment is. They would initially be dropped into this division, whatever that is. And then if you wanted to suggest that they be classified differently, you would just put the division on that line, and then we have to develop the back, just giving a rationale why, based off of record, number of championships, competitive nature, why enrollment is not a good fit for that school.
Got it. Thanks.
If you agree with it, then we do nothing. We
Right.
just approve it and we move on.
Okay.
And that would just have to be done the initial time you play somebody. And the good thing is that once we have a bead on these teams in a particular sport, for instance, if you played Case and somebody's already played them in the same sport, we would already have a sheet on, let's say, Case girls soccer. We would be able to say, oh, we've already designated Case girls soccer as a Division II team. So we're going to continue with Case as a Division II team for all opponents.
Who's going to monitor this with Max Preps? And the reason I'm asking is up to a couple years ago, there was nobody there that realized that like, they were counting like round robin games or injury fund games in Pawtucket as regular games when in the league as full as games on our record. And I called and explained to them that it's a half a game. It doesn't count on your record. And then if we had that non-league game also, how will they know like which games to count in our RPI and which ones not to?
Good question. So right now, I'll say that in the last few years, we've moved heavily towards Max Preps for a number of reasons. Okay. So
it's got to be financial reasons.
If I just go to, no, Michelle, there's no money.
That was awesome.
That was awesome. But Mike, if I go here and I go to football, okay, and then I go to St. Ray's. So there's a few things that can happen here. You can take control of this team, okay? You can take control of this team on Max Preps. We can show you how to do that. Your athletic department can take control of St. Raphael's Academy as a whole. And they can appoint coaches. They can give you access to this. So the quick answer is that depending on the coach or depending on the athletic department, you can have as much or as little to do with Max Preps as you want. Okay? But you can go in and you can edit all of this stuff, including your roster, your results, your schedule. You can do everything. You can manage it, or one of your assistant coaches or managers can do it. But we also have an automatic update with Max Preps. So what it does is it pulls for all of our sports, it pulls the schedule, the roster, and results for every single one of these sports over from the RIIL website. So years ago, when you had that mix up with the injury fund being counted as a game, this automatic update was not live. They didn't have this. So right now, if you look at your schedule, and I hope it's somewhat accurate, like, did you enter any of this, Mike?
I enter all of it.
Okay. So even if you didn't, okay, it would all be there. Even the roster of 49 players comes over, and then you can edit stuff. You can get rid of kids. You can put positions in, you can put stats in, but all of that is automatically generated from the information added to the Rhode Island Scholastic League website. So I think the answer to your question is, we have people in the office here, myself included, who go through Max Preps to make sure it's accurate. We have Julie and Sue, who have their own who have their own sports, and they go through it to make sure it's accurate. And then we're going to have coaches who choose to do this stuff as well, and do a lot of roster management and going through their schedules. But we can give you access. We can give anybody access to their teams. So we had a good question from Derek Thayer. Is it possible to know which schools are opting for 80, 50, and 80, and which are opting to play up or down before the schedules are made? That's a good question. I don't have an answer for that right now, but I will.
Thanks.
And Drew, Max Preps, the league website, and UTR are going to talk a little bit more. It's not going to be, UTR is not going away, but Max Preps is just going to be used for the standings, basically, for schedule and standings, whereas UTR in tennis, Universal Tennis Ranking, is going to be used for those individual matches and to set your ladders. All right, we've been here for a long time. Any additional questions?
Tom, I got one question. Could you pull that RPI screen that you had up? It was Charahoe, was that screen that you had up? It was girls soccer with the
Sure.
RPI listed in the rankings.
Yep, hold on. I got to go back to it, but
It's a prime example, Tommy.
all right.
Now, I don't want to look at St. Ray's. I want to look at Mike Sassy's football page again.
Girls soccer?
Yeah, I think that's the one you had up there.
Yep. Okay.
Well, if you look down, if I'm understanding this right, so Charahoe overall record was 11-7. And so Mount Hope was 8-5. They're both in the same division, but because Mount Hope's RPI is at a 5, 6, 7, whatnot, and Charahoe was down lower, that's why they're ranked higher from the RPI.
My initial answer is going to be, I don't know, but I'm going to look. All right, so right now it's designating games, like you can see it right here. It says league games, playoffs, and tournament. For some reason, it's counting the Westerly game as a tournament. It's not counting the Moses Brown game. It's not counting the East Greenwich game, and those are league games. It's not counting Pilgrim, which is a league game because they're in Division I. Those are the playoff games. So I think that it's pulling the wrong games.
Okay, because
I
know you mentioned earlier to Mr. Alves, you mentioned that records really don't exist per se anymore. So we're going by the simple RPI ranking. So they're ranked lower down, but we know the issue was they didn't pull the games in.
Yeah, I'm going to check it right now.
Well, also Moses Brown and EG were down in 2, correct?
Oh, were they?
Yeah, Moses Brown's
No, Moses. I
not
thought
in
Moses
Division 1
Brown
in
was in
girls
Division
soccer.
One.
No, not in girls soccer, in boys.
Oh, maybe that's it. Okay. Tommy, I'm going to be honest with you. I can look at it and I can get you an answer on it. I can't, I just,
Yeah, also keep in mind that Westerly was in Division 3 and Fitch, which was also counted on Charahoe's, is in Connecticut, and they had an awful season too. So the opponent win percentage would have been fairly low relative to Mount Hope playing Division 1 teams.
Okay, so it's based solely, so the record of an 11-7 record and an 8-5 record is why, even though they played, they're 8-5, they have the 5-6-7 win percentage, and Charo had 4-6-5, but they won more games. It's simply based on win percentages. Records are out the window.
I think we had a bunch of ties too, because that's not Mount Hope's. We didn't only play 13 games.
Okay.
so I mean, Tommy, I can go through this, like I said, this was, but I am gonna say this. Right now with the 18 games counting for Charahoe and the 13 games counting for Mount Hope, you are 100% correct. So right now, the way that it's displaying right now, Mount Hope is counting 13 games versus Division 1 schools. Charahoe is counting 18 games versus Division 1 and Division 2 schools. And yes, Mount Hope has a better RPI than Charahoe because of the additional games played against lower competition, possibly including Westerly, who is in Division 3.
Okay.
And they're in Division 1. So I don't want to minimize the point that you're making, but because the point you're making is correct. In 18 games, they played more games and had games versus teams in lower divisions, and that is the reason that they're ranked lower. But I do want to note this too. It's not that far off either. It's a 5.6 and a 4.6. It's only one off.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. So we're going to go by, so that overall record column starting in this upcoming year is going to be gone. I know Mike Traff mentioned earlier, so our standings will be based only on the RPI rating, winning percentage, opponent win percentage, and no longer the overall record. It'll
Correct.
be, it won't matter, I guess.
Correct. The record will be there, but you're going to go by this RPI column, which is right next to the left of Cumberland's name.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
But that comes back to your overall point, Mike, of it's not how many games you play, it's gonna be the whether it's 50% or 80%, it's gonna be the quality of those conference games that you're scheduling.
Correct. And Tommy, I do want to note also that Chrissy, can you tell me how many teams were in Division 1 girls soccer last year? Looks like there was about 12. Just keep in mind also that Charahoe, while they're ranked lower, is still making the playoffs. So we do have the expanded playoff field.
I don't know off the top of my head, Tom, but I think 14.
Okay. So it's not, could your opponents, I don't think in football, because there's so few games, but in a sport like soccer or basketball or hockey, when you're playing, upwards of 22, 20, 24 games, when you're looking at that many games, your choice of schedules of opponents could impact your seeding, but it's not going to determine whether you get into the playoffs or not. You're still going to have the opportunity to get in, but it certainly could mean the difference between a 4 and a 6 seed or a 4 and a 5 seed.
Yeah, we for football, and I know you don't want to talk about just football, but it does play a smaller factor to figure out scheduling games, whether we do 50 or 80%, because it does come into play a little bit, because it could come back to, knock you out of the, from a 4 seed to a 6 seed, or say, I know the playoffs are still there, but where we fit into the bracket of, Super Bowl, state championship in Division 1. I thought that's how I understood it, but I just wanted to make sure I just picked Charo because their record was 11-7 and Mount Hope was 8-5. I think I understand it.
Yeah, and I didn't even recognize it. Just got a question from Wes too. What's the benefit of a higher division to play a lower division in a league game? And I think the benefit there, Wes, is either you have a natural rivalry with somebody, you have a geographic rivalry with somebody, or you just want to make sure you have a few more competitive games in a division. So to me, those would be the three main areas that you want to, like, for instance, I know every year Westerly and Charahoe play the first game of the year. Now, whether that's a league or non-league game, they do that not because they want to, that's just a natural rivalry being right next to each other. So that's the reason they're going to schedule that game.
I would add to, like, for us next year, we're stuck in Division 1 for girls tennis, right? We just graduated 14 seniors. So we really only have 2 returning players. So for us to be able to take 50% and not get bageled all year, is going to be important for the health of our program. And if it was a contact sport, it would probably be good for not only the health of our program, but the safety of our players.
Thank you, Chrissy.
I think too, building on what Chrissy's just saying is taking the 50%, like us, we're in D4 football being pushed up to D3. We're probably going to play 50% because I'm still trying to build a program. You're not, if you think you're going to be top of the division in your division, then you probably shouldn't be taking the 80%. The 50% was kind of put in to give equity to teams like, say, boys soccer Division 3. Take the 50%, the lower half of D3 plays each other home and home, and then play some games up. It's about not getting bailed, like Chrissy said, and just destroying your program because we're going up there with a bunch of freshmen and sophomores. You gotta, when you stop winning. So like I said, I don't think people are gonna be picking 50% just for a competitive advantage because it's a tougher road to make the playoffs that direction. But I don't think anybody's just going to take 50% because it's an easier, because you want to schedule your own opponents. I think the quality teams are gonna, most of them are gonna take 80% because they think that they're gonna be playoff bound. It's for the guys that, teams that end up in the wrong division, like we were talking about at one of our meetings, Woonsocket basketball on the girls' side. They got in a division because of school size that probably doesn't benefit them, and it's not helping them build a program. So that take a 50% schedule, take your wins where you get them, play, like we'll play a partial D3, D4 schedule, hopefully build up some wins, and going into that following year will be better. But taking the 50% just because you can schedule some different games, I don't think that that's going to be that's the outlook for the 50%. It's keeping your program striving in the right direction and building your program.
Thank you, Carl.